Do it.
104.5 The Team, your home for New York sports. We go down to the man covering all the news in the Dallas area, Mike Fisher. He is the Cowboys insider for 105.3 The Fan and just about everything else. Mike, let's start. Are you shocked that Tony Romo is walking away from football?
No. This is something that he's kicked around, and therefore we've kicked around. Our first time we reported it is November 16th, and we even were specific enough to say that he would get contact from all 5 football-related networks and would have a particular interest in CBS because he's very close friends with Jim Nantz. And then as time went on, we speculated that Romo could do football with Jim Nantz and could do golf, including the Masters, with Jim Nantz. What we didn't know then and still aren't sure even today, as I'm told by sources, that CBS, as we speak now, that CBS is planning that there will be a press conference featuring Tony Romo. So while on the surface this thing appears to have moved really quickly, this has, in a sense, been in the works for 5 months. And the only thing I don't know about it yet is, what do you do with Phil Simms? Is he fired? Is he demoted? Do you move him sideways? And those are CBS issues to deal with. Now the Cowboys and Romo have some football-related and asset management issues to deal with.
Fish, the friendship with Jim Nantz, is that how he was promoted to that role where Phil Simms was so fast?
Yeah, and again, it's really tough to, and I hope CBS doesn't do him or itself this disservice of saying, hey, here's a sports code, here's a microphone, good luck, because that's what ESPN and ABC did to Emmitt Smith, and through not really the fault of his own, it was a disaster. They made Emmitt Smith look ineloquent. They made Emmitt Smith look clumsy. They made Emmitt Smith look not knowledgeable. And, of course, as Emmitt Smith has grown as a person, he's a community leader in DFW and a business giant who speaks in front of monster crowds. In fact, the Barack Obama re-election rally here a few years ago, at the last minute, somebody canceled. They called Emmitt Smith to speak. And people that don't know Emmitt, that only know him from that awful stint with ESPN, Emmitt Smith's going to speak on behalf of the President of the United States. But, of course, it went brilliantly because he had a chance to prepare. I hope Tony Romo gets a chance to prepare.
Was there ever interest from the Houston Texans? Why is he not the Texans quarterback?
Yeah, absolutely interest from the Broncos and the Texans. And the problem was the ship just gradually over the course of 3 weeks kind of sailed. And the parties were all looking for a perfect fit. And, of course, that includes the Cowboys, who wanted to try to get something in trade for Romo and kept trying to milk that cactus. And there just wasn't anything there. And then as time went on, the Broncos and the Texans, both of whom at one time would have happily taken on Tony Romo, they start to get the sense that, we don't want to do this money-wise. We don't want to do this commitment-wise. And then Romo saying, through Tom Condon, I've got this commitment, including family, of course. He's got his third son due the first week of the NFL season, he and Candace. And the perfect fit just never happened. In another time, in another place, and here's a big pile of money, I think that could have been had, but not this time around. And that will mark the almost certain end of Tony Romo's football career.
Cowboys insider Mike Fisher. Follow him on Twitter at FishSports, right here on 104.5 The Team.
So we're going to completely rule out the possibility that Romo goes to CBS and a big injury happens to the NFL, whatever team it may be. That's not going to be good enough to lure Romo back onto the field?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's two key people that do have that dancing around like sugar plums in their head. And one of them is Jerry Jones, who just loves Tony Romo and thinks he thinks Tony Romo is Tom Cruise in Top Gun. He's a fighter pilot and wearing a bomber jacket, straddling a hog, and turning Kelly McGillis straight. That's how powerful he thinks Tony Romo is. And Romo certainly has the same vision. I could ride in on a white horse and rescue my beloved Cowboys. These are fanciful notions. They don't match very much up with reality. Think about it. Tony Romo, who's already not exactly a bodybuilder, is now going to let himself go from football shape to golf shape, and shortly after that to dad bod shape. That's one reason it's unrealistic. Here's the other one. and this is an old Barry Switzer story. So you guys, of course, remember Barry Switzer took over for Jimmy Johnson as head coach of the Cowboys, and had some success. And then a few years later, he and Jerry decide let's end this now. So I'm walking down the hall of Valley Ranch, the old facility, with Switzer, and I said, "So what are you going to do now?" I said, "You know what you ought to do? You ought to take an office here and be a Jerry advisor, and you're around to guide anybody and go have a couple of glasses of wine with Jerry too when it's appropriate." He says, "Nope." He says, "You'll never see me again in here." And I thought, why? I asked him, what's wrong? And he said, "No, nothing's wrong." He said, "The next head coach, who I believe was Chan Gailey, and any head coach is not going to want the former head coach hanging around and looking over his shoulder and hobnobbing with the owner and answering phone calls from the media when they say, 'What'd you think of Chan Gailey's play calling yesterday?' The new coach doesn't need the old coach sitting in the catbird seat." Of course, Switzer had that because Jimmy had just taken the job at Fox, so every week there's Jimmy ripping Switzer. And so Switzer really wise of him. So I'm not going to sit around here and hover over the shoulder of my of the guy that takes over for me. Well, to me, the same logic should rule here. The worst thing for this Cowboy team, the worst thing for Dak Prescott, is to have all of us saying, "Boy, he threw an interception. Somebody call Romo."
Right.
The organization doesn't want that. The people that ultimately will make those kind of decisions don't want that. So Tony Romo's retirement needs to be a real retirement and will be. Now, here's a little catch, and not everybody's figured this out yet. The official Tony Romo departure, if they do this right, shouldn't be until June 2nd. He can take his job at CBS and do a press conference today and all that kind of stuff, but he needs to stay on the 60-man roster till June 2nd, and then the Cowboys put him on the reserved retired list. That causes the Cowboys to, number one, retain his rights. So if he ever does want to come back and coach and play for the 49ers or whomever, the Cowboys would say, "Okay, well, 49ers, you have to give us a pick for that." And so the Cowboys would hold his rights. And by waiting until after June 1st, the Cowboys could make him a June 1 designation cut, spread out the remaining cap room of $19 million over 2 years, and gain a $14 million opening of cap room. So there's a lot of asset management stuff to be done here, along with all the excitement and the emotion and the bittersweetness of Tony Romo no longer being a football player.
Cowboys insider Mike Fisher. Follow him on Twitter at Fish Sports if you want to keep up to date on all the news of sports coming out of the Texas area. Fish, we appreciate you. Know you're busy as all get out. Thanks for making time.
Thanks, boys.